You know that feeling when you find something that completely changes how you work? That moment when a tool becomes more than just a tool? That happened to me this year with AI. But here's the twist. The AI I swore by for almost a year, it's not the one I'm using today. And the one I originally gave up on? Well, it's now my secret weapon. I'm about to share my honest journey of pushing these AI tools to their limits. One of them hit a wall. The other one opened doors I didn't know existed. And I bet it's not the one you're thinking of. Stick with me. I promise by the end of this, you'll know exactly which AI to use for what, without all the marketing hype getting in the way. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. I'll be sharing my experience with ChatGPT from OpenAI and Claude, built from Anthropic. The two big AI assistants that have completely changed how I work. For almost a full year, I was totally team ChatGPT. When they released GPT 4.0, it just clicked with me, you know? What made ChatGPT work so well for me? Three simple things. First, it was super easy to use. I could organize different projects in folders. One for writing, one for coding, one for research. I could even create custom assistants for specific tasks. It felt like having a whole team at my fingertips. Second, it just got me. I didn't have to fight with it to get what I wanted. I'd ask for something, and most of the time, it delivered what I was actually looking for. And third, they kept adding cool new features like every couple weeks. It felt like Christmas morning over and over again. But then I started hitting some walls. The biggest problem is that sometimes ChatGPT would forget what we were talking about. Imagine having a conversation with someone who keeps forgetting what you just said 5 minutes ago. That's what it felt like. It didn't happen all the time. Most of the time it was fine. But when conversations were extremely long, like sometimes doing extensive research, it would forget about the initial things I mentioned. I also noticed that conversations within project folders would usually only be retained in that project. So anytime I needed to reference something, I could only do that within a project folder where all that discussion happened. Otherwise, I was starting over from scratch with a new chat session. And when I tried to get help with more complex coding projects, man, it was like pulling teeth. For simple stuff, sure, no problem. But anything more complicated was a struggle. It's like ChatGPT could help me build a birdhouse, but when I needed help building an actual house, that's where things fell apart. So when everyone started talking about Claude Sonnet 3.5 and Opus, I thought, let's see what the hype is about. I was hoping for something better, but honestly, my first experience was pretty disappointing. Three big issues stood out. First, the responses felt kind of cold, like talking to someone who's technically answering your question but missing the whole point. I'd ask for something creative and get something that felt like it came from a robot. Not all the time, but the longer the conversation would drag on, the less human like it sounded. Second, Claude kept giving me bullet points and outlines when I wanted flowing, natural content. I'd ask for a story and get a story structure instead. Even more so when I would have an extended conversation and it would seem like after a while, it was getting a bit lazy. Every new response after a while was getting more brief and putting things into streamlined bullet format. It was frustrating. And the coding help? At first glance, it seemed good, but anytime I asked for changes to my code, Claude would completely rewrite everything. It's like asking someone to change the paint color on your wall and they demolish the entire house and rebuild it. So I went back to ChatGPT, working around its problems because at least I knew what they were. Let me break down the key differences between these two in simple terms. Think of it like this. ChatGPT has a short-term memory like a goldfish. You can have a great conversation, but after a while, it starts forgetting things you talked about earlier. Claude, on the other hand, has a memory like an elephant. I can upload a 100-page document and Claude will remember details from page 5 and page 92 in the same conversation. It's like talking to someone who actually remembers everything you've shared. Now, Let me explain what people call RAG in super simple terms, which is retrieval augmented generation. Imagine you have boxes of your own documents and information. You want the AI to help you make sense of all this stuff. With ChatGPT, it's like having an assistant who will look through your boxes when you ask, pull out relevant papers, and then try to answer your questions. But sometimes this assistant doesn't fully read what they pulled out. They just skim it and give you an answer that might miss important details. With Claude, it's more like having a friend who sits down, actually reads through your documents, and understands what they're about. When you ask questions, they respond with the context of everything they've read, making connections between different documents naturally. Now, don't get me wrong, ChatGPT does a pretty good job with RAG handling, but I think Claude does this a little better. It's the difference between someone who searches for keywords in your documents versus someone who actually understands what your documents are saying. Then Claude Sana 3.7 came out, and everything, I mean everything, changed. Claude has this amazing feature called extended thinking. It's like watching someone work through a problem out loud. Instead of just giving you an answer, Claude shows you its entire thought process, considering different angles, catching its own mistakes, and adjusting along the way. For complex problems, this is a game changer. It's like the difference between a teacher just giving you an answer versus showing you how to solve the problem yourself. This is where I was absolutely blown away. Let me share a real example. I had this project where I needed to process a bunch of files, clean up the data, run some analysis, and create reports. With ChatGPT, it took me dozen back and forth prompts to get something that kind of worked, but was still glitchy. With Claude 3.7, I got a working solution on the second try. And when I needed to make changes, it actually understood the code and made precise changes without breaking everything else. It was like the difference between having someone who knows some coding terminology versus having someone who actually knows how to build things that work. The moment I knew I was switching for good was when I was building a simple app interface for a tool I created. ChatGPT kept giving me code that looked good on paper, but wouldn't actually run when I tried it. I made so many revisions and went back and forth with ChatGPT to troubleshoot, but a lot of times it didn't fix a problem it created. Claude not only wrote code that worked the first time, but actually explained why certain approaches would work better for what I was trying to do. It wasn't just solving the immediate problem, it was making the whole project better. It felt like upgrading from a basic toolbox to a complete workshop with an expert standing by to help. That was it. I was all in on Claude. Here's what I've learned about when to use each one. ChatGPT is still amazing for quick, simple tasks. Need a quick answer, a basic script, a simple creative idea, or even a better search function than Google. Yeah, ChatGPT is great for that. I even switched my default search tool from Google over to ChatGPT. So every time I open up a new browser tab or type a simple search in my URL window, it automatically searches with ChatGPT instead of Google. I honestly like using this as a basic search because I get so much more value out of that content versus doing a simple Google search where I'm browsing links to all kinds of sites pulled up in a search result. It's also better at connecting with other tools and services. If you need something that works with websites or other apps, ChatGPT has more options. And for team projects, ChatGPT makes it easier to share your work with others. You can share conversations and custom assistants with teammates, which is super helpful. Claude is absolutely brilliant with files and documents. You can upload all kinds of files, PDFs, spreadsheets, images, code, and Claude understands them all beautifully. I love how Claude can adjust its tone. Sometimes I need technical documentation. Sometimes I need creative content. Claude can switch between these naturally without sounding weird. I can give it precise instructions on how to respond back to me in a way that I can tailor specific to my use case. So let's say, for example, I want help with ideas on a podcast script, but I want to fine tune it for talking points and supporting ideas. I can direct Claude to give me a responsive tone that provides me with natural language in a thoughtful way that coaches me as a specialist in speech or writing, so I don't sound too much like a goofball. And for complex problems with no clear answer, Claude consistently gives me more thoughtful, balanced responses that consider different angles and possibilities. So, what does all this mean for you? Here's my honest take. These aren't just chatbots, they're completely different tools that are good at different things. It's like comparing a Swiss Army knife to a full toolbox, both useful, but in different situations. If you need quick help with everyday tasks and like having connections to other apps and services, ChatGPT might be your go to. If you work with lots of documents, need help with complex problems, or want more in depth conversations, Claude might be the better choice. I'll also add that Claude just recently released the ability to connect to Google Drives. So if you have a Google Drive with files you want to pull in, it does this seamlessly. My biggest lesson? Stop trying to make 1A I do everything. I now use both, each for what it does best, and my work has improved dramatically. And if you're wondering which one I pay for now, well, you might have already guessed it by now. So, both free versions of these tools work great and complement each other pretty well. But since I'm writing a lot more and do my podcast and draft social content and do coding and also build up my frameworks for business development strategies to help grow my own business, Claude stands out as the front runner and provides better value to me at the moment. So I opted to stay on the paid plan with this. That's not to say that I may someday pay up for ChatGPT again, because let's face it, AI is constantly evolving. If other tools become more enhanced and better over time, I may find something else worth my money for the value I think it provides for me. So that's it for my experience on this. I'd love to hear about your experiences. Are you using these AIs in ways I haven't thought of? Have you noticed the same differences? Drop a comment or message me. I'm genuinely curious. And if you found this helpful, hit that subscribe button and share with friends who are trying to figure out which AI actually works for real people doing real work. I'm planning more episodes diving into specific ways to use these tools. Let me know what you want to hear about next. That's it for today's episode. Remember, the perfect tool isn't about the fancy features or the hype. It's about how it actually helps you get your work done. Until next time, keep forging ahead.